Hi everybody, welcome back to my LinkedIn Lives. I'm Jasmine Navarro, Certified Wellbeing Expert, working with educational institutions and companies, helping them support their wellbeing challenges. And as you know, every week I interview different experts who make a difference. And today I'm super excited to be interviewing Darren. Hi Darren, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi Jasmine, no, it's nice to join you.
No, it's amazing to have you here. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so when you and I first came across each other, which is probably a little bit over a year ago, I think, I was
longer.
Was it last year? I think I was business editor for two daily newspapers at the same time. So the Southern Daily Echo in Southampton and the Bournemouth Daily Echo. And then a little while after that, earlier this year, I kind of changed careers and joined the marketing world, which was I'd kind of been interested in the world of kind of content marketing and how that is similar to what journalists do in a lot of respects. And so I joined a company called iPlicit, which is a software business. So it makes accounting software, which is targeted at organizations that have kind of outgrown entry-level cloud computing systems, but or kind of on-premise systems, and they're kind of getting bigger, but they don't have the appetite for one of the kind of big name incumbent vendors. So so it's a company that's keen to put out lots of content suitable for kind of FDs and so on that they will find interesting. So it's a perfect fit. And I know, without wanting to digress too much, I know a lot of probably the people who listen to your material are probably people thinking about making kind of changes in life. And I have to say, kind of changing career, I haven't looked back. You know, much as I was grateful for everything that I did in journalism and the people that I got to meet and you know all the fantastic things that happen there. You know, I'm loving it in the marketing world. Yeah.
You were in journalism for 30 years.
I was, 30 odd years. So so from pre-internet times to kind of digital first times.
Wow.
You know, so a very different business at the end than the beginning.
No, yeah. I mean, there's lots. I mean, I'm so excited to talk to you now. And so you are a real expert. I mean, all of that experience. So, and I love the title that you chose for today, the Crikey factor. Can you tell us what that means and why you chose it?
Well, I stole this idea really from a colleague. So there was a brilliant deputy editor at the Bournemouth Echo, Ed Perkins, who this was his definition of news, because people have different definitions of news, and one that's often said is news is something that somebody doesn't want you to know, which is a good description of a certain kind of news, but it doesn't really embrace everything that's news. But Ed's definition was news is something you didn't know before that makes you say crikey, and I thought that was a gem. So I've kind of stolen that and used it quite often. But I think what I was applying it to really was that, you know, if you're trying to interest somebody in what you do, whether that's, you know, you're putting out a press release trying to get media interested in it, or whether it's just content on your own blog or your social media channels or whatever, what you really want to do is get the bit that you would be interested in if you were not you. You know, if you'd never heard of your organization or your business, what would make you stop and listen? And so that kind of search for the crikey is what it's all about.
No, but that's brilliant, Darren, because so many times that's actually, when you think about it, it's so logical, actually, isn't it? Because if you're not really interested and you're not stopping, because we're all so busy nowadays, and if we're not actually interested in going to stop, then why would anybody else be?
Yeah, I suppose what I was trying to do when I sort of first wrote some pieces about that was to sort of be helpful to people, you know, particularly if you're in an organization and you've been asked to send out the press release or write the blog or whatever about the new hire or the contract win or the award or the charity effort you're doing or whatever. And that's all kind of, it was in a way the sort of bread and butter of newspaper business pages, but it was also, often there was a better story to be told that would get you more attention, So I just really tried to get people to think about, okay, if you won an award, what did you do to win it beyond being, the best in your field? What was so amazing about your kind of proposition? Or, if you'd made a new hire to your business, what was it about, him or her that was so distinctive? What was their kind of strong opinion about something, or their expertise, or just explore that rather than the story that you might have thought of on the face of it, and similarly with, say you've won a contract or you've done some charity work. Okay, well, what was the connection with that charity? Did you have some personal experience that drew you to that? So I was always just trying to get people to think beyond the story that maybe journalists had seen many times before, and just find the thing that was a little bit different, a little bit human and striking, really.
That totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. So is it about evoking emotions then? It doesn't have to be, you mentioned Crikey, so shocking. It doesn't have to be shocking.
No, it doesn't have to be shocking. It helps if it's, I think a good story can do one or two things. Either it surprises people by overturning their expectations. It's like the old, the old adage that dog bites man is not news, but man bites dog. Right? So there's that. But I think if you're in a position either to surprise people or to kind of dramatically confirm something they already thought, because let's face it, a lot of newspapers get by very well on confirming people's existing opinions, don't they? Whether it's the Daily Mail or whether it's the Guardian or whatever, anything that kind of confirms your worldview always does well. So if you've got if you've got insights, I mean those papers I mentioned, they kind of look at the world from their perspective, don't they? So anything that confirms that worldview, but maybe just to look at it kind of step away from that, like let's say in the world that you're in, of kind of mental health and so on, if you're sitting on some insights that kind of maybe you can sort of confirm what people might think, that there's a lot of stress and burnout going around, for example, and you've got your expertise that kind of confirms it or offers a theory as to why that is, then you're sort of tapping into something that's in the culture, being widely discussed, but maybe you've got a slightly different take on it, or an explanation, or a vivid opinion on it. So that kind of thing, really, you want to kind of tap into a conversation when you can. And the other thing I always think is just relate it to people. So even every story kind of has to be about people in some form. So even with some of those slightly dry examples I mentioned in the business world, if you ask yourself who are the people involved in this, that, like, your business has won a new contract, well, that could be, if it's a sufficiently big one, that could be jobs secured, or it could be people helped, or whatever it is. But try and think of it from the people dimension first. I think that's what engaged people. So and in answer to a point you made, it is partly about forging an emotional connection with people, or certainly a kind of human connection. And I always think that folks who are in small businesses have an advantage in some ways. They have a disadvantage in that that maybe their brand name isn't known, and they maybe have to work a little bit harder to get noticed. But on the other hand, they're kind of freer to to have opinions. They're not a big corporation where everything has to be signed off by 6 layers of management.
I've even met people coming onto my lives and they said, oh, but we can't talk about this and we can't talk about that. You know, I can't really say my real opinion. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's just kind of natural, as you know, depending on the sort of organization that you're in, isn't it? So, but yeah, that's where I think sort of small and medium-sized businesses have a little bit more opportunity to make an impact.
So it sounds like, no, thanks, Darren. So it sounds like you're saying, or stories, real stories.
Yeah, exactly. Human stories. And I think the other thing is just, you know, for people who've got an expertise in an area, and this probably, you know, is what you kind of see online with blogs and social media, is just be a bit generous with your expertise, you know.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, in the case of, you know, you and I have spoken before about your kind of insights into mental health issues. So you do that really well. But, you know,
thank you.
Anything that you know about, whether you're, you know, the planning lawyer or the, you know, the CFO or whatever you might be, anything that you can actually share some valuable insights and some practical advice on, which may seem like giving away your best material for free, but of course it's not. The more generous you are with your expertise, the more things can happen for you, more of a profile you can get. And you know, like in terms of journalism, for example, anybody who was well up on a particular field so they could be the expert a journalist could quote, you know, about a developing story or an issue that seems to be kind of around in the workplace or the culture, you know, that's the kind of person that journalists are always keen to hear from. So from a journalism point of view, it works, but it also works if you're blogging or you know, posting on LinkedIn or whatever it might be. So I always kind of try to encourage people to think, you know, what stories are around that you might have an expert opinion on, or you know, what data might you be sitting on that either surprises people or confirms something that they already expected. Or
I like that. Surprises or confirms.
Yeah.
So, surprises. I didn't realize about the confirms, but that actually makes sense because I guess they can relate. Or
I do think people, you know, and I think there's a kind of downside to that in that I think in the world we live in of kind of fragmented information and social media podcasts and everything, we do tend to stick to the news sources that confirm what we already think, right? But, so, and sometimes you need to step outside that. You know, they call it the kind of echo chamber, don't they? But I think
I'm writing this down. Yeah,
I think if you can sometimes confirming what people already think is almost as valuable as overturning their expectations, and maybe that doesn't get talked about quite so much. So I always think, so whatever you're doing, whether you're putting out press releases or whether you're writing on a blog or whatever it might be, you know, if you either think you've got the data that confirms something, or you think there's a big subject that's kind of going on and that nobody seems to be talking about. And, you know, sometimes that was one thing you notice in journalism, that things, particularly in local journalism, I think, that sometimes you're picking issues up on the ground that are being talked about. You know, maybe you're talking to bosses who are concerned about something or other, but it just doesn't seem to be in the national conversation, except sometimes weeks later it does get into that national conversation, you know. So maybe you're sitting on these subjects that's really important that you're not actually hearing talked about online or in the media or whatever. So that all comes back to the idea of being a bit free with your expertise and your specialized knowledge.
Brilliant. And make it a story, or could that be separate as well?
I think they are sort of linked. So
they are linked.
you know, sometimes if all you've got is opinion and no fact, that's tricky. Although obviously, if you've got a profile as, you know, the chief exec of a big corporation, then your opinion carries that much more clout. But if you've got an expert opinion on something that is developing, and that could be a national story that you know, or a trend that's being discussed, and so you've got some hard evidence to back up the thing that you're an expert on and you want to share your insight on, then yeah, I think that's really valid. And
but like, sorry, Darren, before I forget the question, what makes something national? Because like you know, I've been in local press and things like that, but what makes something go to national press as opposed to just stay local? I'm not saying local is not as good as national, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well,
international even.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be that little bit harder if you're small or medium sized to make that same impact. Whereas, you know, locally, the fact that you are the, you know, a local expert on whatever it is going to be easier to sell. And there is a difficulty here in that a subject that everybody's talking about that's making the national news, it's going to be that much harder for someone smaller to insert themselves into the conversation.
They might have a better story or not. It doesn't matter. It's
absolutely. I think really it's the strength of the story that's going to get you seen in the national papers. If you've done something so remarkable that you know, nobody else in the country is going to have quite done the same things, then you might make it. Or if you're, so let's say, you know, it's often the story behind what you do can make a good piece that, you know, at least will kind of will appeal to, you know, it's not going to make the front page, but it might appeal as a kind of featurey, more human-led story. So, you know, let's say, so rather than, you know, I've set up my business, something that I set up my business because of this amazing epiphany I had when I, you know, quit the rat race and packed in my job as a hedge fund manager and you know, took to the quiet life. I went to the country and set up my farm, or whatever it might be. You know, some humans you can often get some way with that kind of the why behind what you do.
And do you think to make it national, international, then it has to be something kind of, well, like you said, the Crikey factor, and kind of shocking or really surprising? You want people to be like, wow.
It's that drama, isn't it? I think everybody likes, and it may be oversimplified, but I think everybody likes that kind of the reason you do what you do. And, you know, I know life doesn't really happen in kind of big moments, but the big moments can be important. The time when you realized that the world needed a product that does such and such, or the time when you realized, you know, you had to change career and go from what you did to your new venture, and that kind of thing. So always think in terms of those kind of pivotal human moments.
That makes sense. Yeah. And in your 30-year career in journalism, like, were there any stories? I mean, you don't have to go into detail or anything like that, but were there any stories? Like, what kind of stories do you still remember? Like, were they, you know, that you wrote about or not in 30 years?
Yeah, I suppose, you know, the life of a journalist kind of moves so quickly that you're so quickly on to the next one that often the things that stick with you are probably the things that just ran, and you were kind of returning to that same subject. It felt like every day for weeks and weeks, or you know, kind of the things that sort of changed your community, you know. So So I suppose if you think back to 2-3 years ago, obviously everything that happened with COVID and the big changes in the workforce then, but I mean, just before that, we'd had something like the demise of the original Beals before some of the stores were reopened under a different brand. But if you were living in if you're from that area, Bournemouth, the closure of
and Marks and
Spencer's and so that was such a huge thing. And because it had such a history, from Victorian times, I just remember thinking, if Beals is going to disappear when I'm the business editor, I felt the weight of responsibility to really cover it well. So things like that are things that affect your community, like the end of the old cinemas in Westover Road in Bournemouth, which were like the kind of focal point of the stuff like that stuck with me, and I took it very seriously. Other than that, it's genuinely, this sounds a little bit phony, but it was never really the big stuff, and the Prime Minister's going to town. That was all good, but some of just the ordinary people that you came into contact with who would tell you their stories were the things that kind of stayed with you, and the experience of journalism kind of gives you the experience of just having to walk up to complete strangers in the street and ask them about such and such, and some of the personalities that you encounter in those kind of interactions kind of stay with you just as much as the big stuff, to be honest. So I'm not sure whether that answers your question. So many stories come and go, and it was the ones that are around for a bit longer that probably linger in the and
moment. It makes me think maybe that's not the question to ask then. What stories do you remember? The question maybe is more, what stories maybe impacted you at the time? Because I guess, especially in journalism, it's not about having the story that everybody remembers, is it? That's not the important thing.
I suppose not.
That has the impact at that moment. It doesn't matter the next day. It's just at that moment, because then, like you said, it's old news.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, some of the people stay with you, and some things leave an impression on you, like an emotional impression, and they would, but I don't want to go too gloomy. You come across, you end up in situations that you wouldn't naturally be in, hearing inquests and things for awful stuff, and really? Those kind of stay with you, and you're not just focused on, on the day you have to file the story, but some of them remain with you afterwards. So you're not necessarily just kind of breezing through everything, just judging it on its news value. Some of those things will remain with you afterwards.
You get involved. So what was the most important thing that you learned, do you think, during your whole career?
Probably just the fact that kind of everybody has an interesting story, really, and sometimes, they might not have even thought about what that is. That's probably why we all struggle to promote ourselves as effectively as we should. But you talk to somebody for long enough, and usually they've got something that if you read it, you would make a big impression on you, in whether it's in personal life, whether it's their achievements, whether it's some awful thing that they've been through and got through to the other side of. Everybody is interesting if you and everybody's been through something important if you just talk to them long enough to learn it.
So if somebody, like you said, and I agree, everybody has an interesting story, but maybe they don't even know. So how do they find out? Like, what would you say?
But I think sometimes that is it the 5 technique? I think maybe actually you mentioned it the other day. That's probably why it came back to it. But if you ask yourself, so let's say you're after promoting your business or whatever, well, if you consider, well, what does your business do, or why does it do that, and why does it do that? And so soon you get to probably something that's more interesting than Brilliant. I've launched a business. It's kind of, I felt so strongly about such and such that I had to launch a business. It's that kind of level. And you're through to something a bit Deeper. Human. Yeah. So I think it is that keep interrogating yourself about what you're trying to share and why you want to share it. And probably you'll hit on something a bit more meaningful than just the message that first occurred to you.
I love that. I love that. So that's, I guess, from your journalism experience, but I know you well. And so now you're with your new career.
Yeah.
What have you learned from that then to help you self-promote?
I suppose firstly, you kind of, so what I'm learning is that and I'd been interested in the kind of world of content marketing while I was in journalism and read a lot about it and kind of, so I was kind of preparing for a move, and then this really good opportunity came along with iPlicit, which was a business that was growing rapidly and had a great kind of vision of what it wanted to do, and had a compelling story about who it wanted to help, and all these people held back because they're spending hours working in spreadsheets and contending with clunky finance software and so on. So there's that. But so I suppose what I learned was, it's a lot of the same skills as journalism. And in particular, because you are trying to think of the human all the time. You are trying to think of the stressed out finance team. You're trying to think of the finance director maybe who wants a source of information that seems to kind of understand his or her pain points and what their role is like. So the fact that we're always trying to provide content that is useful and understands where people are and is not a sales brochure all the time, but is actually just giving them content that is useful and valuable, and might lead them towards the product, but that's not what it's there for in the first instance. So it's a lot more like journalism, and you discover that the skills you knew in journalism I kind of appreciated in another world. So it's closer than you might think.
Yeah, no, definitely. Wow, no, you've mentioned a lot of tips. So can you just say all of those tips again? So we had
So what will we say? So okay, so you're finding your Crikey. Okay.
Finding your Crikey. I love that.
Yeah. So to try and think about what's the kind of unique and compelling story that I have to share.
Okay.
And try and think, if I didn't know me or the organization I work for or whatever, what would interest me about this? So kind of take the names out of whatever you were going to write and think, how interesting is that to a stranger? If I read it,
I like that. Yeah.
Whether I read it in a printed newspaper or if I read it in a printed newspaper, would I stop and read the whole thing? Or if I saw the headline online, would I click on it? Would I keep scrolling and read the rest of it? So that kind of thing. Try and, in a sense, take yourself out of it and kind of always think about people, whether that's your personal kind of dramatic story or whether it's more about the people that you're looking to help because they've got some sort of a problem that you're trying to solve, or whether it's if you're in the kind of corporate world, maybe it's the people whose next job you could be creating, or that kind of impact on people. So that, and just be generous with your expertise and have vivid opinions, because the world is full of sort of bland corporate quotes and missions everywhere. But if you can be more vivid and express yourself more forthrightly, then you can make some headway against all that.
Wow, amazing tips. Yep.
And I suppose the one that I probably haven't mentioned is just, if you're dealing in the written word, try and get the maximum value out of each word. So kind of, whether you like them or not, read the tabloid newspapers and just look at how much value they get out of each word. So they're not overly long, overly complicated. The message is concise and simple. So that's always bearing in mind. Just speak plainly. People are busy, so communicate as plainly as you can. I mean, people will stay with a long piece of written text or a long video or whatever if the content is there. So that doesn't mean you've always got to be short, but be concise. Give just
to the point.
Put as much meaning across as you can in whatever space you've got.
Brilliant tips. Thank you so much, Darren. Really appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's been very, very useful. Very useful indeed. And thank you everybody who's been watching. If you have any questions for Darren or you want to message on the post, please do, and we will get back to you. And thank you so much, Darren. Anything else before we go?
Welcome. No, I just I hope it's been useful. And I did some so a couple of years back during lockdown, I did some LinkedIn articles about how to kind of find your news and share it. So maybe I'll post
please do
one of those in the comments and
in the comments.
Yeah.
And how can people find you?
So probably the best thing is to find me on LinkedIn. So my name is Darren Slade, and I work these days for iPlicit. I am on Twitter /X as well, but like everybody, who knows how long either how long it will last or how long we can last there. So maybe LinkedIn is the place to start.
Thank you so much, Darren, and thank you so much everybody else, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.